Hi YouTube friends, teachers, homeschooling parents. This is Elizabeth with an S, and I'm coming to you today with another science hands-on activity. If you're new to this channel or you haven't yet subscribed, please do click on the subscribe button below. The aim of my channel is to provide teachers and homeschoolers with inexpensive ways to engage their students in quick, simple, hopefully simple, hands-on science activities to illustrate a science concept. So in today's activity, the Rat-a-tat, we're going to be talking about how to convert mechanical energy to sound. So this would be something that you would do after you have discussed how energy can be converted from one type to another. So your students should be aware of the different types of energy and maybe some of the laws, like energy can neither be created nor destroyed, that type of thing. But the activity itself is pretty fun, makes a little bit of noise, and so of course they're gonna love it. So what you will need are 4 items for this particular activity. The first thing you will need is a bottle cap. And since I live in East Africa, we get glass soda bottles, so bottle caps are readily available. If you don't have Coke bottles, glass Coke bottles at your fingertips, you can just go to a local restaurant that has a bar and ask them for their bottle caps. I'm sure that they'll be willing to give them to you. They're just going to throw them away. So you can get one of those. You will need a button, preferably 2-hole button, but if you have a 4-hole button, it'll be fine. And if you don't have a shirt that you want to cut up and cut the buttons off of, just go to your local thrift store, buy a shirt for 50 cents that has tons of buttons on it, and there you go. The other thing you will need is a rubber band. This one's kind of big for this activity, so probably you could cut one large rubber band into a half or into thirds, and so minimize the number of rubber bands that you actually would need for a class. But I think these probably are available at school, and if you needed to buy them, they would be fairly inexpensive, and you don't really need that many if you're cutting them into thirds. So you do need a rubber band, and then you need some string. Now this particular string is a little bit thicker, as you can see. It's a little bit easier to do than just basic sewing thread. So if you can't find this easily, maybe you can ask the custodian at your school, if you're in a school, if he has some thread like this, or the art teacher at your school. You don't really need a huge amount. If you want to buy it, you can maybe have some craft stuff at home, or maybe someone you know has some craft stuff and they'd be willing to lend you some thread. So really the only expense here probably would be, the biggest expense would be the thread. You can use slightly thinner thread, although it may be a little bit more difficult to get the desired results. So I would go with something slightly thinner, but not as thin as sewing thread, but not too much thicker than this. Maybe shoemaker's thread or embroidery thread might work as well. So these are the 4 supplies that you need. So what we'll do is we'll build the Rat-a-tat and explain to you how to build it, and then we'll talk about the science behind the concept. So as you can see, I have cut my rubber band off of the big one. So basically you could cut a large rubber band into thirds. That's fine. You do want it to be a little bit elastic. And I have cut a piece of the thread, and you can see that I've tied knots down the thread itself, and then you're ready to put the whole thing together. So what you're going to do is you're going to put the rubber band through one of the buttonholes, like that, and you're going to tie it around the bottle cap, keeping the button on the top of the bottle cap. So you tie the elastic on the bottom, just a knot to hold it together. So for little hands, this may be a bit challenging, so you will need some classroom helpers, or for homeschoolers, you know, you might want to do some of this a little bit ahead of time or be there to help them. There you go. So that's tied around. And then you're going to take the thread that you have knotted so nicely, and you're going to put that through the other buttonhole and tie it. Now the problem with the thread, of course, is that it's going to become woven together. So this could be a little challenging, so just give me a minute and we'll get that through. Okay, not so bad. And then you're just going to tie it onto the button. Just a couple of knots should do. And then your thing is built. Your rat-a-tat is built. And then comes the noise. All teachers love that bit. And so basically what the kids are going to do is they're going to hold the rat-a-tat in one hand. They can hold it like this, you can hold it like that. And different ways may change the tone of the sound. And they're gonna, with their fingers, they're going to hold the thread and just rub the thread and you can see as you move down the thread, every time your fingers encounter the knot, it's going to cause the button to snap onto the rat-a-tat, so onto the bottle cap. So if you want more, you could tie more knots into the thread and then it would hit more often. All right, so what I've done is I've added a few more knots into my rat-a-tat, and now so what's actually happening here? So when you run your finger over the string and you reach the knot, your finger gets jammed at the knot due to friction. Okay, so we're still there on hopefully you've talked to them about friction, but if not, you can just say that it gets jammed. And the rubber band gets pulled. So when you pull your finger past the knot, the tension in the rubber band gets released, and then the elastic energy in the stretched rubber band is converted to kinetic energy that causes the button to snap back into place. The kinetic energy is then converted into sound energy. In other words, a loud rat. This happens again and again at each knot, so you get a rat-a-tat. So one of the things that you can talk about with your class, or if you have children that are doing, multiple children that are doing this, you can talk about why the sound of each rat-a-tat is different. If you have an only child, you could do several of these and then test that out. Change the number of knots. That's what I did. I went from having knots like this to knots like that, so then that will change something. You could change the size of the knots. So I've only just done one knot, but you could do 2 or 3 at the same point and see what happens to the sound that way. And talk about how that affects the sound that is produced. You could tie the rubber band. Now my rubber band is tied pretty tight. You could try loosening, do a looser rubber band and see if that changes the sound. Use different types of bottle caps and buttons. Like this is a plastic button. You could try a metal button, a big button, a small button. Maybe instead of Coke bottle caps, you could see maybe if, different types of bottle caps. Maybe use a beer bottle cap instead of a Coke bottle cap and see what happens if there's a different sound. So these are just kind of the experimental ideas that you could do with this fun little device. And then what you can really, the takeaway is, what's the relationship between the sound and the size of the knot? For you, the teacher, just a tip. When the knots are bigger, the rubber band is going to be stretched tighter. When the rubber band stretches tighter, there's going to be more of elastic energy, which means there should be more sound energy. So that's just something for you to keep in mind if you're not so up on physics type things. So that is the Rat-a-tat, and I think this one's kind of a fun one. Probably once you hear this 100 times, you will get really, really annoyed, but then you get to send them home to be with their parents if you're a school teacher, and they can talk about the fun thing that they made, and what they learned. So this could be a takeaway for that as well. If you're a mom or a dad homeschooling, then when your partner gets home, they could then be the wonderful recipient of the Rat-a-tat, and the students could learn, the parent then could learn what the child learned that day. So this is really simple. If the elastic comes off, because if you've tied it, I just tied it in a double knot on the bottom, you just fix it back on, and good as new. So there you have it, the Rat-a-tat. This is Elizabeth with an S. And I hope you are liking these science activities that I am putting on my channel. If you have some specific science concept that you are looking to get an easy hands-on activity for, please put that in the comments below, and I'll see if I can come up with something. I can't guarantee it, but I'll certainly look into it and see what I can come up with that will be inexpensive for you, the teacher. If you have something that you have done that you would like to share, you can also put that in the comments below, either in the Facebook links that I've posted or directly in the video comments themselves. So I hope to see you around again next week for another fun hands-on science activity.